right, good morning, everybody. This is somebody that I wanted to introduce to you guys, and I'm super excited. She has been a longtime mentor of mine, whether she's known it or not. This is Sandy Collier.
Hi, everyone.
So we'll start with, we'll start with something different. Normally I start with asking you guys how you got into that, but I'll start with a story that I have that you probably don't know. So when I first started training horses, I was like, I know all the things. I went through a course for 8 months. Like, I know what I'm doing. I had my little pride and joy that I started from 6 months old. And I thought he was really, really broke. I was like, no, this horse is like solid. Like, I'm a rock star. He's a rock star. So I signed up for a clinic with you, Bob Avila and Lynn Anderson, and it was Tajiguas Ranch, I think, and it was a really long time ago. And I had this horse. He was like one of those horses that when you have like a really green trainer and the horses are green forever and like not really that broke, but they think they're really broke, like not soft in the face. Like I had him over bridled with some giant bit that I had bought for him before I went. And I think you guys had separated into, you were doing like the rein work, and I think Bob was doing cattle work and Lynn was doing something like fence work maybe.
Yeah.
And my horse had actually never even seen cows, so I was completely, probably I shouldn't have been there. But so I realized, okay, obviously I need to start with the rein work. So that was the first time I actually worked with you. I think I was like, it was a really long time ago. It was definitely early 2000s. And I will say that my horse was not in any space ready to go work cows. And I actually stayed with you the entire 2 or 3 days because I knew what I wasn't going to do was going there. But the most amazing thing about working with you is that I never felt, even amongst all of the people that were there, I never felt bad about the fact that I then in that moment realized that I probably didn't even have a clue as to what I was doing on the level of horse trainers. So I want to speak to the fact that you really cared about me and my little green horse. And I probably even came in and said, well, I'm a trainer, which I would never even. But you were so nice, and you could tell you genuinely cared about where we were at, and you met us right where we at. And we did that exercise on the fence that I still use with every single client, even if they're a dressage client or whatever they are. It's the one where you do the roll back on the fence and then you spin and then you. So that was the only thing I actually did in the 3 days of the clinic.
I still use that one too.
But by the end, my horse actually had steering. Like when I thought he had steering, he didn't. So I just want to speak to the fact that that was my first experience actually meeting you. And I have clinics with you a couple times here and there over the years, but it was so big to me because I think sometimes the trainers can be frustrated with people that show up at clinics like that. And even if they don't want to show up like that, they kind of, you can tell if one person is holding back a clinic, they kind of, it puts a break in it, but it never felt that way. And I've also been at clinics where people have been in that space and you show up the same way. So I want to just say that it's such a big thing. And that's why I appreciate you as a trainer so much, because you have the ability to have that empathy and like, you just meet people where they're at and you make them better from where they're at. And so I just want to say like, that's amazing. And so thank you for that experience because it was very enlightening for me.
Thank you. I'm better and better at that as I get older and mellower.
Yeah. So, so we'll start with how you got into horses. What was your story around that?
Well, people always ask me, why did I choose going into horses? And I kind of always felt like horses chose me. I felt like since my cells started to divide, I loved horses. I just always felt a tremendous affinity for them. And I loved who I was around them. And I loved the people that were around them. And I loved the smells. And I just loved horses. And so as I was growing up, I grew up on the East Coast. So of course you do 3-day eventing back there. So that's what I did. And then I moved to the West Coast in my late teens and got introduced to cattle ranching and cow dogs and cow horses. And I was just all over it. Like anything cow I was in. So I naturally gravitated toward the 3-day eventing of the cow world, which is the Reined Cow Horse. And
It's so funny. I say that all the time to match the two different sides. I'm like, there's a certain mindset of people that do dressage and the people that do 3-day eventing and then the people that do hunter jumpers. I was like, it kind of goes right along with like the Western flip side and the mindset. I was like, eventers and Reined Cow Horse people are very similar.
They really are. And kind of how you do horses is how you do your life. And I've always kind of been like the Swiss Army knife person.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of can do a little bit of everything pretty good. And so I've always, you know, I've never done anything to the level of excellence, but that's okay. I mean, well, I should say level of perfection. I've managed to get to the level of excellence a time or two, but perfection not. But I have a vast array of things that I'm very interested in, that I've learned an awful lot about, and that I make time in my day for. And that's just the kind of person I am. I'm a learning junkie.
Yeah. Yeah. So from coming out here and then switching over to the Reined Cow Horse stuff, how did that start for you?
I was working on a cattle ranch that was just a few miles, well, like about 9 miles up the coast from where Doug Ingersoll was at that time. And so I pedaled a bicycle, a 1-speed beach cruiser bicycle down Highway 101 every single afternoon when I was done with work, and took a lesson and pedaled back home. Like that's how dedicated I was. So that's kind of how I got started. And then when I left that ranch, I went to work for Tom Shelly, and then I hung out my own shingle right after that.
Right. Yeah. And so talk about the process of going from working for these trainers and then out onto your own. Like, how did that, I know there's a couple of people in here that are, and people that are watching and listening, and trainers that are kind of up and coming and transitioning into their own after they're done working for someone.
Right.
And what that feels like. Because
it's the scariest thing in the world. I was so scared because I thought, who would ever want to put a horse in training with me? Right. You know, and where do you start? And I didn't even own a truck or a trailer, or I owned a saddle and a bridle. That was about it, you know, but I had met people when I was working with Tommy that were really interested in training with me if I left. And so I hate to say that a few of them left with me. You know, Tommy and I had a long talk about it, and neither of us were really happy about it, but that's what they wanted to do. And so it was all up front. But, you know, I just, like everything else, you just put one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden you kind of start to evolve and opportunities open up to you. And I got more and more confident. And, you know, of course, back at that time, women weren't doing a lot of winning. Right. But we were bumping our heads against the glass ceiling, and eventually, you know, that kind of was overcome. But I always, because I was so nervous about whether I would be able to actually earn a living doing this or not, I took a job. I'd always been very interested in emergency medicine, and I'd been an EMT and had actually done quite a bit of my training to be a paramedic, but hadn't. You have to be able to graduate from there and go into that profession and have a number of hours a week that you're working. Anyway, I didn't want to do all that. So I got a job as an EMT on the local ambulance. Mm-hmm. And it was part-time. It was just nights. And so I started horse training. And from the day I opened my barn, I had a full barn.
Right.
I loved emergency medicine too. So I kept that job for a long, long time, right. And eventually let that go and start working in the ER at the local hospital. And then finally I couldn't stay up day and night. So, you know, you can when you're young, but
right.
So I let that go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking to the fact that it is especially that discipline, such a male dominated discipline, especially back then, and how you got to where you got, like winning the fraternity, and, you know, what was that process like for you?
You know, people ask me a lot about that, and I never really felt like it was a big handicap. I just felt like I had to be 2 points better to tie him. So right. I had to be 2.5 points better to beat him.
Right.
And by God, I was going to stay home and work at it until I could. And then I did. Right. And then, you know, and Lynn Anderson, you know, was right around the same time, and she was doing the same thing. And so then all of a sudden, you know, we kind of became accepted, and it was okay. And we got marked what we deserved, and it all worked out fine. So I never really felt like it was them against me. It just sort of was what it was. And this is what I had to do to make it work. And so I stayed home long enough and worked at it hard enough until I could.
Yeah. And I feel like the Reined Cow Horse world, everybody's so supportive at
Yes.
shows, and
They really are, more than any other discipline, for sure.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I'll go to those shows and then I'll go to other shows with my clients and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, even other trainers help other trainers, non-pros, at a show if they're not around, or if they miss, if they are at the other end of the arena. It's such a good group of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing part, is that I will go to shows with my son. My little one will sometimes come and people are like, oh, we want you to help you just like mindset stuff at the show. Like, and we'll go to dressage shows and I'm like, this is not one of mommy's shows. So you have to be very quiet.
Yeah.
Very quiet. So yeah, it's a very different life and very different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know, I probably felt as out of my league as you did when you showed up at that clinic. I didn't know really how to really train a horse from start to finish and really get one shown. And I certainly didn't know how to support my non-pros. That was all part of the journey, part of the evolution, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah. So when you have people like non-pros that you take to your shows, and you go with them and you can see them start to kind of get in their head a little bit, or see them start to get worried, what are some of the things that you do to help them sort that out?
I think, Barb and I teach this at our clinics, and I think that one of the really important things to stay focused as a non-pro on is your job. What is your job at the show? And your job at the show is to prepare yourself and your horse to show. So what does that mean? You have to go over in your head the kind of things that you have to do to support your horse. Like, say he's not a great lead changer. Okay, I got to keep my off leg on him, until that time when I switch my feet and kiss, or I know he needs a little bit of guiding around the out gate. So start that, you have to go through your head about the ways that you have to support your horse. You have to, part of that job, your job is how to, know when he's tired, be sure he's tired enough, but not fatigued, be sure he's rested, he's seen the arena, that you're rested, that you've eaten, that you're not, going to go hypoglycemic in the middle of your run, just all of that. And if you just keep bringing yourself back to that and focus on that, it seems to have a lot of the other things that happen inside your head. It seems to quiet them down, that, and just being sure that they're confident at their level of expertise when we go to the show. In other words, they feel confident in executing the maneuvers that are going to be expected of them. And if they get unconfident at any time while we're there, you kind of go back to what was working, and then maybe a little bit further back than that. And then you start moving forward again from that place at a slower pace, a less of a gradient scale, until you get over that piece. And it's just the same thing same process that we always do at home, but you do that at a show too, because it shows horses are notorious. All of a sudden the big stopper quits stopping, or they, whatever happens. And so you just go back to the last place they were both comfortable, and back a little bit further from there. And then you inch your way forward till you get over that hump, and then there's another one. But those are kind of some of the things that one other thing that I think is really important, and this is another thing that Barb and I teach, the judge's scorecard is a very important learning tool. And I think everybody needs to learn how to read one and go and see, even if they didn't agree with the judge, how the judge saw their run. And the video, of course, is a great after thing tool to use. But I think the most important scorecard is your scorecard. And your scorecard is the few things that you're going to work on at that horse show that are under your control, that your body has control over, that you're wanting to work on, that have nothing to do with the judge or anything else. And if you do those things, like let's just say, for instance, stopping. So I'm working really hard on sitting back and staying relaxed and sitting deep and saying whoa and not pulling till I give my horse the opportunity to stop. If I do all of those things, then that was part of my scorecard, then I'm a winner.
Right.
And if I didn't, then I have my homework for the next show to work on.
Right.
But it's your scorecard and it's things that are under your control. It's not like I'm going to go plus half my stop. No, because that judge might have a whole different idea of what a plus half stop is that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
But if you have a series of things that you want to accomplish on your horse on that day, That's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it really different too. It changes the dynamic of being a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you accomplish things you wanted to accomplish, you're a winner.
Right.
You might have marked a 68, but you're still a winner.
Right.
Now you have new things you can work on at the next show. And it makes it a more positive experience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I found that when I helped a couple people that had gone through a championship show, a dressage show, and I found that people's idea of getting to that show and then being at that show, it felt like there was so much pressure tied into that one score because they had worked all year long to get there. And just the pressure alone of what that one score meant kind of made things fall apart for them. And so do you feel like you ever question the people that you're taking to shows with you? Why are you doing this? Do you have those conversations with them? Like, why are you showing? You know, is that something that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Why are they riding?
Right.
Even more important than why they're showing, but showing isn't for everybody. And some people think they want to show, and then they, you know, it's very intimidating and you know, it's very objective. It's a lot of things that are not important to some people. Mm-hmm. And so, hey, not wanting to show is an awesome thing. That's fine too. But some people are driven to compete, and they're, you know, they've got that mentality, that striving for perfection and wanting to compete and wanting to show people what they've got. And so they crave it, you know? So yes, it's really important to know why you even are riding, but why you want to show. And then what does success mean to you? You know, that scorecard thing, like, does success mean to you that you win the class, you have to come home with the blue ribbon, or is success to you that you set out to accomplish what you want to accomplish? And that you've got to be very realistic about. Mm-hmm. Only one person gets the blue ribbon, but everybody can be successful.
Right.
But I remember really early on, Margie Suter said, I was talking to her about showing, and she said, you know, Sandy, she had this accent, you know, Sandy, I just try to be the best I can be on that day, in that arena, on that horse, and I just let the winning take care of itself. And you know what? I have used that forever. I just try to be as good as I can be on that horse, on that day, in that arena. And by golly, plenty of times it made me win, you know, but it took a lot of the pressure off of having to win. I just had to be as good as I could be. Mm-hmm. And that's a very realistic, you know, very realistic thing. So.
Yeah. And how important do you think that the mindset of the person and where they're at energetically combined with their horse affects their horse? Like, I know at like a surface level, I think everyone says that, right? If your horse can sense if you're afraid, you know, and you always hear that growing up, but no one ever talked to me deeper about that. Mm-hmm. It was just like, okay, well, if I'm calm, my horse will be calm. And I showed a lot when I was young, and it was like, this isn't working out for either of us because I can't get calm, you know? So how big of a piece do you think that is for horses? And I guess
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge because a lot of times people don't, like my non-pros didn't think they were nervous.
Right.
I don't get nervous. I'm like, oh, really?
I just horse dripping in sweat and you haven't looked it yet.
Yeah. But when you are just even a little bit nervous, you know, your body tightens, your perception narrows, your hands are quicker, and your horse is like, who is the stranger riding me? You know, so either they have to get used to you as the horse show person, or you have to learn to, you know, deep belly breathe and learn how to relax and focus on a bigger picture and not allow all the adrenaline effects to take hold, because it completely changes your timing. Like I remember, and how I know that is I remember I used to go to schooling shows. My horses were never bad at a schooling show. I'm like, why don't you behave like this at the horse show? Well, it was a schooling show. Hell, I didn't even have my chaps on, you know? Yeah. So, and I was totally relaxed because it didn't mean anything. I wasn't going to win anything. And my horses were really good and there was nothing to fix. And I was like, what is that? And that was when I realized that just that little bit of nerve pressure, adrenaline, changed my timing, changed my focus, changed my ability to, you know, stay with peripheral vision, and made me quicker. And my horse responded accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you get through that piece once you realized, oh, this small amount of a shift is changing? How did you get to the place where you could either get into who you were all the time for your horse, or did your horse adjust with you? And
I think we met. I think we kind of met in the middle. I think we kind of met in the middle. You know, I know that you know as a life coach that being aware of a situation is 90% of the battle.
Right.
So just being aware that those little things that were happening in my body had such a profound effect on my horses was huge. So then it was like, how do I go about quieting my mind, slowing myself? And so it was just a question of doing it, you know, quieting my mind before I showed, preparing myself and my horse the best that I could, and then going in and being willing to just try to be the best that I could be, taking all the pressure off myself, and just relaxing and trying to enjoy the journey, which is what we're supposed to be doing when we show. And I mean, it just tortures us, but we just have, you know, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. Oh yeah, right. You know,
I'm so glad we're doing this right now.
I'm so nervous. I'm about to pee my pants or throw up. I don't know which, but I'm just doing this because I have fun. I'm spending all my resources and money and time so I can do this and just, you know, well, but it really is fun. So when I changed my perspective, it enabled me to, but it never really fully did it. We all still, if you're not a little nervous when you show, you're lying to somebody.
So what does quieting your mind before you go show look like for you?
I kind of was one of those weirdos that was into meditation kind of early on in my life.
Right.
Because I lived on a hippie commune for a while. You probably didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't.
I went to Woodstock too. I was just telling my physical therapist, because I just had my shoulder replaced, that, you know, we were talking about Woodstock, and he had a little intern there who was in her 20s. And I said, oh my God, you probably don't even know what Woodstock was. She goes, oh yeah, it was Snoopy's bird, wasn't it?
Oh my God. So amazing.
But anyway, I digress. So meditation is really helpful. If you can do deep breathing, if you don't do a little bit of meditation where you focus your mind, stretching, you know, doing a lot of stretching, but more than that, having the confidence that you and your horse are prepared for the level that you're going to try to compete at. I think that all of those things are really important.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like you saying, me and my horse, we kind of met in the middle. So there's that level of trust build up where I try to tell people, you know, you're going to be as consistent as you can be here at home and working with your horse, so that when you get to the show, you've built up enough of those like marbles in the marble jar, if Brene Brown was speaking to it, where they can take care of you a little bit. And you can kind of fake a few things that maybe you would school at home. You kind of just got to ride through it and then ask for forgiveness later, you know, and them having enough of a base, a foundation of trust with you where they know, okay, they probably messed up a little bit, but we're okay. You know, it's not going to riding like that all the time and then getting there and having it kind of explode in front of you, instead of going really slow, getting things really clean and precise, and building that trust so that when there is a situation where you're like, they can go, okay, I've got this. But
that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah.
If they haven't been intimidated into learning whatever discipline you're trying to train them to do, you know, if you've been sort of a partner in the journey and showed them and explained to them, and if they've gotten confused or frustrated, you've backed off to where they were comfortable with something and back a little further, and then you go forward again. They do learn to trust you. And if you do, your timing isn't just right, you know, stopping, and they know you're not going to like immediately rip them a new set of lips, they'll fix it. They'll go, oh, you know what, she just screwed up there. Let me finish that stride. I'll stop. They have total confidence in their maneuvers and they trust you. And that's a whole different showing experience with a partner than it is, you know, if you don't, and you do intimidate them and coerce them into their training, like a lot of guys do. They are just waiting for an opportunity to get you. It's only a matter of time. They will pick the most expensive horse show or the biggest, you know, and they'll get you every time. I've seen it happen a million times. Like you don't even know who that horse is. Like where did that come from? But that's just the universe knocking on your little door saying, hey, you weren't a very good person, so you know. Yeah, no, you were absolutely right there.
Yeah. And through your career, obviously knowing even most trainers start off from a place where you feel like, I think this is life in general, actually, where you feel like you know so much when you're young, and that you get gifted with a situation like that, where it's like, oh, like, maybe this isn't, maybe I wasn't prepared for this, or maybe I should have actually done more of this. Do you have a story around that from when you were, in the time of your training career, where you're like, oh, one of those stories maybe, where you did train too hard and you did get given the gift of, look what you did. Let's learn that.
Oh, yeah. I got a few. I just don't know which would be the best one to tell. Yeah, but like you said, the gift, that is a gift. And just like everything else, you're here to learn through your experiences. And if you don't, then the universe just works its way right back around and lets you have that opportunity again. And so, if you can learn with the subtle little tap on the door instead of waiting, for the door to crash down, to learn your lessons, it's a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a story?
Oh, well, let's see. I'm just trying to think of a real juicy one. I really don't probably have a juicy one, but well, okay, yeah, I got one. So the year, it was 2000 and what was 9/11? 2002, right?
I think so, yeah.
Or 2001. Anyway, that year I had 2 futurity horses. I had She's a Shinette and Diamond J Star. And She's a Shinette had just been so great the whole year. Like, I just was a passenger. She was just amazing. And it was always, oh, She's a Shinette. Oh. And Diamond J Star was a stud. And so he was a little bit tougher and didn't try as hard, didn't have as much heart. I had no idea he had as much talent as he did, because compared to She's a Shinette, there's just no comparison. So we win the pre-futurity on She's a Shinette. We go to the futurity, and I lose a cow in the finals. I lose a cow. We won the prelims by 7.5 points. I'm like, I'm going to win the futurity again, And I lose a cow in the finals on her. I'm like, oh my God. Well, Diamond J Star also made the finals, but I'm like, oh boy, well, I'll just do the best I can do on him. But stopping, he was real good in the herd. So we get through the herd work, and it's time for the rein work. So I knocked him around a little bit, because he didn't always stop real consistently. Mm-hmm. So maybe a little too much. So anyway, I run in there, and he drags his bottom the first stop, and he drags his bottom the second stop, and he didn't stop the third stop. And it was my fault, my timing, my everything, but it was just the universe, It was just one of those things. If he'd stopped all 3 times, I would have, but he stopped twice. And so Todd Bergen won the futurity that year, and I was second. Actually, I tied with Bobby Avila, second and third. We split it. But that was just one of those things. Had I left him alone with the training that he had, where we were both confident in it, I probably would have gotten all 3 stops really good, or at least certainly good enough. But he wouldn't have dashboarded me and bounced me almost out of the saddle on the third one, So it was just Sandy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I feel like that's the thing, right? Like, I see some people get to the shows and they're trying to school so hard on them at the show.
Yeah.
When it's kind of like, if you weren't there and you didn't have that yet, like, it's definitely not going to happen right before
Absolutely.
you go in.
And that was the lesson that I took from that. It's like, what I have for a horse show, for a big major horse show, is what I have a week before.
Right. Oh, that's
at least a week before. That's it. I'm not going to try for any more. I'm just going to get that solid, get both of us comfortable with that level. And if it's only a 0 or if it's a +0.5, mm-hmm. That's what I'm going with. Because if you spring it on them and you start demanding too much, too close to a show, it'll bite you.
Right.
Very, very wise. What you just said. Yes.
So I know that you work with Barbara really closely,
mm-hmm.
and I believe you guys do some retreats as well as regular clinics, right? Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how you got into that space and what those actually look like.
Okay, well, I'll have to give you a little bit of backstory then.
Yeah.
So I ran out of joints to replace about 4 or 5 years ago. Like I had
the last clinic I was at, you were either, this wasn't actually that long ago, it was probably it was in Morgan Hill at a big cover, and either you weren't supposed to be riding because you were going
Yeah.
to school, or
Yeah. I
the other way.
I had a lot of those times. I had 4 rotator cuff surgeries, you know, and then I had a knee replacement. Then I had another knee replacement, and that knee replacement wasn't good. So then I had a revision of that, and that still wasn't good. Then I had a shoulder, and then I had another shoulder, but the other shoulder had to wait because I had to have the 3rd knee on my right knee. And then I finally got that done. And then I finally got my right shoulder done. I'm like, holy mother. So, but while I was still on the knees, I realized that, you know, with the rotator cuffs and all that, I just couldn't keep doing that. So it was a question of values. Like, I mean, this was a huge turning point in my life because I'd done horses for 40 years. I didn't really know anything else. I had my real estate license, and I'd only done that because I'd gotten my license because I wanted to buy a place. So I thought, well, if I'm going to buy a place, I might as well get my license and learn how to buy it, right? That's who I am, right? I wanted to be able to fly places, so I became a pilot. And then that wasn't good enough. I had to become an instrument rated pilot in case I ever found myself in the fog. That's just who I am. So I had my real estate license, but I didn't feel like a life doing that would really express my values. And so I wanted to find something else that I could express my values, you know, as much in my horse training or as much as in my horse training. So I called up Barb. I didn't know Barb very well, but we're both in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. And I felt like, so that was an in, right? I could just call her up. And I had never really talked to her before that, but I called her up and I said, Barb, my name's Sandy. Oh, I knew who you are. Anyway, we got talking. We had so much in common about the trajectory of our lives and careers. And I said, you know, I think that there's a really big place in the horse industry for us to do clinics together. I said, I don't really know what they look like. But, you know, your mental skill, she went to the Human Performance Institute and graduated. And that's Dr. Jim Lair's mental skills for peak performance, trains Olympic level athletes. She'd done that and she'd applied it to her cutting horse training. And she's an NCHA, you know, money winner and major event winner. And then I do cow horses, which means I do reining and down the fence and some cutting. And I'm a life coach. So I said, you know, I think there's a place to pull all this together. And I said, but I don't really know what it looks like. So I said, I'm going to have a women's retreat at the Circle Barbie in a couple of weeks. And I said, why don't you come? I said, I've invited 23 women from all over the country. They're all horse people, but all kinds of, like I had Charlotte Burdall, who was our bronze medal Olympic dressage rider. I had Hall of Fame gals. I had hunters and jumpers. I had cow horse people. All these different, but horses was the main thing. And some just regular people, not competitive performance type horse people. And we all met at the Circle Barbie, and I had given them the book, The Untethered Soul, to read beforehand, and to outline their favorite paragraph, and that was going to be part of the personal meaning piece that we would have. We weren't going to do any horses because I was just kind of getting going in this, but I made sure that 10 other women that I invited all were really good at something that they would love to teach.
Okay.
So that was what it was going to be.
Oh, cool.
So we'd have some personal meaning, some spiritual stuff, and just connection and fun stuff.
Okay.
So we all get together and we had so much fun. I can't even tell you. We had a gal there that was into martial arts, and one that was like a world-class belly dancer that brought the castanedas and the shawls and all that. And we had one who'd worked at JP Morgan her whole life and was a financial wizard and told us all, gave us classes about, you know, where we needed to be at this point in our life and why this and not that. And we had, one of the gals is a fly fisher woman, and she brought rods and reels, and we casted out in the parking lot and in the horse paddocks, and we tied flies, and we just had a blast. But the thing, and then we all went over the paragraph of The Untethered Soul that we loved. It was so much fun that all those gals are still all in touch. And what I realized was that there was a connection piece that at our older age that we all really want. So the people that are still married still want it. Those that are widowed still want it. You know, the empty nesters still want it. And we're all horse people. And so there were a lot of, so I talked to Barb. I said, well, okay, so that was round one. You know, where to from here? And Barb said, well, I think we need to split it up and do retreats, which will be more about the connection, personal meaning piece and all that. And then we need to do horse high performance clinic where, you know, you do the cow horse and the reining and I do the cutting and we teach the mental skills. And I went, Yeah. So that's what we did, and we're still doing it and having a blast.
Yeah.
The only limiting factor is the number of, venues where we can have either of those, that's affordable,
Right.
and you can get to, and so the number of places are limited, but it's just been awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. So that made it easy, segueing into that, because that is a way that I can really express my values, and kind of keep my North Star guiding me, doing that. And then some judging, because I think it's important to give back to the industry. And then I sell real estate, and I love helping people achieve their dreams, whether they're riding a horse or buying their first house. I mean, to me, that's, I dig that.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's all working out for me. So
Yeah.
that's how I got from one canoe into the other, going down over the rapids.
Yeah, and it all kind of ties in together, because I always tell people, it's interesting because we had a woman who does qigong, and she came and would do an hour before our retreat, and before I just had a couple clinics, so she'd come out first and get people kind of in their bodies before we would start. And she said, well, I was like, let me put up a title for you, and and we can, and within it was, I believe the title they had given her through her certification had healer in it. And she was like, oh, don't put that. That makes me really uncomfortable. And I was like, why would that make you uncomfortable? And she's like, well, healer, like, I'm not healing people. And it got me thinking, like, what does that look like? And if we're speaking to the fact that to heal, your bodies have the ability to heal themselves once they're in a space of no stress. Your body goes into homeostasis and everything can kind of flow where it needs to. And I was like, honestly, I feel like the lady that helped me put my sales page together was a healer, because the moment I gave her my information and the stress was gone, I was like, that's like, I think at any level, I think the lady at Starbucks who gives me my coffee in the morning, like, and she makes me feel better. Like, yeah. I was like, I just think it's more about who you are, and if it is something that's very important to you to be able to help people. I was like, it doesn't matter what it looks like and how you're doing it, you know what I mean, as long as you're doing what is honoring who you are and as a human, and like you said, honoring your values. What can I do that still keeps me in line with my values, which, that connection piece seems really high for you, and being able to support people on their path, and that and so do you guys have retreats and stuff that you're doing this year, or is, and then yes, you have all that on your website and stuff? Because I would love to stick that in there.
Oh yeah, the website, yeah, it's beunstoppable.us. Okay. And we have a Facebook page, Be Unstoppable Barb and Sandy, and that we've got a whole mailing list. And what we do is every other week we each write, or every other week one of us writes an article, either about cutting or cow horse or reining or mental discipline, whatever. And so there's like a tremendous amount of value being on our mailing list, and all of those articles that get sent out all have our schedule and stuff on them. So, because we're all about adding value to people's lives, not just, Yeah.
I'll stick that website in the link for there so we can make sure that people can get to it, because
that'd be great.
I'm very interested in it after this. And so so to honor time, we can wrap up, but is there anything else that you feel like you really want to share? There we go.
What you were saying, the last thing that you were talking about, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. It's how you're doing it. That's what's really important. You can be a garbage collector and be honoring your values and growing. And so, if you have a desk job, but all you ever really want to be is with your horse, you can do your desk job and do it really well and create value, and then take that with you to your horse life. That's really important. And the other lesson that has really been good for me to learn is when things happen, they happen. That's the fact. This happened, whatever it is. And then it's what our mind does that gives it significance and makes it either make us happy or unhappy. You can be standing in the grocery line and some yahoo's out there in front of you taking their sweet time, and you're like, But the fact is, you're waiting in the grocery line, period, end of story. It's the mind that makes things either be okay or makes us go crazy. So, you know, when you catch yourself becoming unhappy about something, just realize that what just happened is just a fact. It's just a fact. It's just what happened. It's what it is. And don't let your mind take you down the rabbit hole. And I mean that in terms of horses, when horses are making us crazy, as much as with people, because it's really all the same. So yeah, that's it.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Just a life-changing.
Only took me
whole life-changing perspective.
Only took me 67 years to learn that one. But
okay, well, thank you so much. It's been so fun talking to you. And I definitely will stick the link in for your guys' stuff.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm definitely going to try to actually make it down.
Cool.
Because I need to do a clinic with my horse. Yeah, so that'll be fun.
We'd love to see you.
All right. Well, have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. I love what you're doing.
Okay,
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.